You know Dewey's Bakery for its iconic sweets and treats, the sugar cakes, the thin cookies, and the cake squares, especially on Mondays when you can get one of those delectable squares for free. But during these hot months, you can't forget about the ice cream. Made from scratch and featuring all your favorite flavors, Dewey's ice cream is the perfect way to beat the heat this summer. And what do we always tell you about Dewey's? It's the place for all of life's celebrations. And in the summer, that means weddings. Since 1930, Dewey's has been crafting delicious wedding cakes, plus custom cupcakes and groom's cakes. Team up with one of their celebration specialists to find the perfect fit for your special day. To get started, just email cake@deweys.com or swing by the Thruway location in Winston-Salem. And for any of your everyday cravings, you can also visit the store at Renolda Manor or at Friendly Shopping Center in Greensboro. Dewey's, celebrate every day.
This is the Triad Podcast Network.
I'm Algenon Cash, and you're locked in. Welcome back to the show. Today, we're diving deep into the intersection of business, policy, and the future of North Carolina's economy. Joining me is someone who works behind the scenes to influence much of what we see and oftentimes what we don't see coming out of Raleigh. Jake Cashion is the Vice President of Governmental Affairs for the North Carolina Chamber, and also a good friend of the Locked In program. From workforce development and housing to trade policy and regulatory reform, Jake and his team are shaping the environment where business happens in our state. Whether you're a small business owner, a concerned citizen, or a policymaker yourself, this conversation will give you critical insight into where we are and where we're going. Jake, thank you for locking in, man. Thank you for coming back to join us.
Yeah, thank you, Algenon, for having me today.
Yeah, man. Well, I guess to just get started, I've known you for many, many years. You almost came to work for me at one point in time. Probably the biggest disaster. I should have brought you on. Look at what you're doing nowadays. But all jokes aside, man, you're a good friend of mine, a friend of the program, and someone that I respect immensely. Not only at the state level, but you reside right here in Kernersville in the Triad. So definitely someone that I look to oftentimes when I want to get some insight about business. But let's not assume that my audience knows the great Jake Cashion as well as I do. So I think my first question for you, man, let's just start out with your role. You're the Vice President of Governmental Affairs at the North Carolina Chamber. Talk a little bit about what that means. What does day-to-day look like for Jake in Raleigh?
Yeah, thank you, Algenon. I appreciate the kind words. Very, very kind of you say, and always enjoy being with you and our long relationship. So, thanks. Yeah, day in the life of me. So my role at the chamber is to bring policy and politics together. So I oversee all the policy items that we promote and push, advocate for, and I oversee all of our political programs that we use in order to make sure that we have good folks in the elected in the offices that we need to have decision makers in. So my job there is to just make sure policy and politics align. You can't get anything done within any sort of elected body without those two things working together. And I think it's important that people recognize that. It can be, we're in a heated environment these days, but nevertheless, I think it's important that we understand policy and politics should align in order to get things accomplished. So I have a group of folks that work with me. They have their policy portfolio items, and they're working every day at the General Assembly in order to promote and advocate for those policy items, whether they be workforce development, whether they be childcare related issues, whether they be energy, environmental, healthcare, tax, just across the board, labor, just across the board, anything business related it comes through us and through our legislative agenda. And so we work every day on behalf of job creators in order to create the best environment so that people can have jobs and that they can take, and therefore they can take care of their families.
No, I thank you for the service and everything you're doing there. you talked a little bit about, when I think about the North Carolina Chamber, I also think about competitiveness
Mhm.
and how important it is that our state is just as competitive as any other state in the Mid-Atlantic or Southeast region in terms of recruiting business. So, when you think about the business climate in North Carolina, I know we've been recognized quite a bit over the last few years as a great state to do business in. But when you look around the state of North Carolina in terms of the business climate, do you feel like we're still gaining momentum, or are we losing steam, or how do we compare to some of our southeastern neighbors right now?
That's a fantastic question, Algenon. It's one that we're grappling with right now, actually. We're the North Carolina Chamber's the largest broad-based business organization in the state, and we work daily to make sure that we maintain the gains made over the last decade plus that got us to the number one state in the country to do business. We're number one, number two over the last 5 years. Virginia beat us out last year by 3 points out of 2,500. And so we want to make sure that we know what our weaknesses are now. We've had so much growth over the last, I don't know, 5, 8 years or so. And you can see it in your everyday life. With traffic, with the orange cones on the highways, which I think transportation investments has been one of the biggest untold success stories of the state. But nevertheless, I think where we're at a sort of we're at an inflection point. The growth has generated new opportunities for us to solve. Opportunities such as how we're going to get folks into how we're going to modernize our child care regulations in order to allow people to get back into the workplace. How are we going to make sure that we're taking care of water, wastewater in order to have the supply that we need, and where we're going to put that? Western North Carolina and the tragedy of Hurricane Helene has shown us that, there is so many challenges just from the hurricane damage alone, but that doesn't even account for the growth that the state has seen in other parts of the state. And so, we're doing a lot of work now through our North Carolina Chamber Foundation on water and wastewater and the future of it for North Carolina, what our water supply is going to look like. We're doing a lot of work on the future of energy in the state. We're in the middle of an energy bill that just was in committee earlier today. And the energy demands that are upon the state now, just from a growth perspective, are enormous. And so, what does the future of energy supply look like, and how are we going to get there? And so, there's a lot of these type of discussions going on right now. Housing is a great example. Workforce housing, middle class housing. What does that look like in North Carolina? We've released a report with the North Carolina Realtors and the North Carolina Home Builders Association, for example. Between now and 2029, the state is at a 750,000 home unit deficit, meaning in order to keep up with the growth, we need to create 750,000 new units, whether that be rental units or for sale units. But if the stars were to align and we see policies, pro-growth policies that would allow us to get there, we'd see a $489 billion economic impact. We'd see 2.2 million new jobs created. We'd see $51 billion in new tax revenues. We'd see $122 billion in wage growth. So you can just see the economic growth opportunity that just tackling the housing challenges alone would bring to the state. Our current state GDP, $750 billion, but this is a $500 billion opportunity that's staring us in the face. So, and if we've got some new announcements coming, economic development wise. So where we're going to put folks? We like to say, people need jobs for homes for their jobs, and that's exactly where we're struggling now. And so there's a big battle going on in Raleigh related to that. So, I don't know if I've answered the question directly, but there's a lot of challenges now, thankfully, because North Carolina is a top tier state. But the challenges bring these opportunities to solve and in a bipartisan way, and we're working towards that and leading through that.
Yeah, I sort of back up a little bit. I know the General Assembly's active right now. We've seen a budget come out of the House. I guess now the Senate's looking at their version of that bill. I've not heard any indication from the executive branch of the governor's office where he stands on the budget right now. That might be something that you can comment on. But in this current legislative session, this long session that we're in, what are some of the top legislative priorities that you and your team at the chamber are really trying to focus on?
Yeah. So the Senate goes first this year in the long session, went first this year in long. So the Senate has passed their version of a budget. Well, let me back up. The governor submitted his budget to the General Assembly back in the spring. The Senate passed their version of a budget a month or so ago, and the House just maybe last week or so passed their version of the budget. So now all of it's going to be into a reconciliation type of process through a conference committee, and so all that's kind of coming together. And those, we're thankful and lucky to have leaders like Donnie Lambeth here in the Winston-Salem area who represents this key. Kyle Hall, Winston-Salem, both of those two folks are key appropriation chairman in the House. And so they're going to be part of the process in order to kind of pull a reconciliation. You got Senator Berger in Guilford County and Rockingham County kind of leading the charge there. So you're going to see a lot of local triad folks in the middle of helping to solve bringing a budget together. And so we're excited that that's possible, and we're excited to have key leaders there in those right places from North Carolina. I mean, from the triad in Forsyth County. So that process is coming together. There's some tension right now, but I think you're going to see things come together in due time. It's this way every cycle, but I think there's a lot of good in both. In both chambers' budget proposals. And so we're going to see them reconcile that out here pretty soon.
And any specific measures that the chamber is
Oh,
trying to champion, or we should be looking for, or
yeah, so you'll likely see some childcare related provisions hopefully move forward. We've Deborah Durr, who is on my team, she has been leading the effort to get some childcare reforms put in place over the last 2 years or so. And so I think we're going to see some fruits of that labor come. It's an important issue, a huge issue for companies of all shapes and sizes and people of all, different wage levels. And so I think it's going to be a real exciting opportunity to what may come with it. One of the key tax provisions for us is a thing called the franchise tax. It's basically a tax on capital. And it's North Carolina has probably one of the most onerous franchise tax compliance issues in the entire country. And so we're trying to figure out how to reduce the complexities of this franchise tax, or what we would like to see is a complete elimination of it. And we believe, and we know from the work that we've done, surveys elsewhere, that if we could eliminate the franchise tax altogether, it would probably do as much good or more than zeroing out the corporate rate. And so this is a exciting opportunity, and both chambers are taking a look at that, and we're hopeful to see what might happen with it. So that's a big priority for us on the financing side of the budget. Frankly, Algenon, we do not get involved in appropriations discussions. You could imagine how many different folks would come and want us to help advocate for their needs in a budget, and so we just don't see that as our place. And so we don't necessarily get involved in the budget discussion directly outside of the finance packaging part of it.
You mentioned childcare being a top priority for a lot of companies that are located in North Carolina. I'm certain it is. Also, workforce development. That's a phrase that we always hear when we're talking about economic development. To some degree, I feel like the phrase has become somewhat of a buzzword. What do you think is actually working in North Carolina when we talk about workforce development, and maybe what are some things that need to change?
It's a very, very challenging topic. I just had an email sent to me just yesterday from a Canadian company that moved into Charlotte, and someone asked them the question about what drew them to North Carolina, and it was workforce and the availability of our talent supply, taxes, low tax rate, good geographic environment, close to airports, good infrastructure, that kind of stuff. Um, but from a workforce development perspective, what's working right now, the NC Chamber, and I would send you to this. The NC Chamber Foundation has a pilot program underway where we have partnered with a healthcare group to encourage more nursing students to get into the nursing program. And so we're using a thing called I'm drawing a blank on TPMs on the acronym for TPM. But we're using TPM management type of tool in order to track and put these people into a career path that they can advance in, and that can help solve the thousands upon thousands of employee deficit that's needed. And so this TPM program is getting noticed nationally, and some folks of our foundation have been to DC and other places to talk about the growth opportunities within this pilot program. We are taking that now and applying that same model and scaling that same model up to to the ag industry, which is the largest industry in the state at $110 billion. We feel like there's a really great opportunity to scale that up into the manufacturing industry and really grow those manufacturing jobs here in North Carolina. So there's a lot of new opportunities with it. Propel NC is a new way that the community college system is going to be looking at. Hopefully, if it can get funded in the budget, it's going to be a new way to that we connect the education system in the community college space to the needs of the marketplace,
Hmm.
and really align those two things in a much better way. And so that's an exciting new opportunity that's coming down the pike. So yeah, I think it's been a long time, but I've been frustrated with the workforce development side of things for a long, long time because it's the top need you hear everywhere in the state, but for whatever reason, it's at the bottom of the list. So I think we're now starting to, finally see some real momentum get built into some new and innovative workforce development programs, as opposed to just, I hate to say this in a negative way, so it's not meant to be negative, but as opposed to just the government kind of being that solution from a workforce development perspective.
Yeah, I used to serve on the Forsyth Tech Foundation board and did a couple of terms with them. And so I love hearing that, we're looking hard at making sure that our community colleges are part of that education pathway. I think, so many years ago, our community colleges got demonized, and it's taken a long time to work out of that stigma of whether or not you go to a four-year institution or you decide to go to your community college. But I think in terms of workforce development and making sure people in our communities are ready for these jobs that are coming into North Carolina, whether it's advanced manufacturing or whatever it may be, the community college system is certainly an underutilized part of what we do here in North Carolina.
Can I add on that as
Sure. Yeah.
well? One of the other really huge opportunities is the military. And there in North Carolina alone, there are 20,000 folks that are discharging from the military every year and trying to figure out what their next part of their life is going to look like, whether they be 4-year enlisted to your top brass. So there's a great opportunity to have those folks that are discharging and their spouses. They want to stay here in North Carolina, but do they have trouble finding work? Do they have trouble figuring out how to transition into the civilian workplace? We do a CEO poll every year, and this year, we asked this question, first time that we were ever asked this about, military affairs, veteran affairs, and do you want to hire those type of folks that are coming out of the military? 97% of those CEOs polled said that would be their top priority if they could find those military folks. So we're doing a lot of work in the military affairs space right now to try to help translate what a career in the military is to what a civilian world career may be, and then kind of help attach and connect the dots for those folks. And so there's a lot of exciting stuff going on with it. And I think if we can help solve bring some solutions to the table and really just some connectivity to the table related to the jobs, the businesses, but also those military folks that are discharging and their spouses, man, we got a great opportunity to keep those folks here and really grow the economy.
There's nothing like summertime here in the North Carolina Triad. And when it comes to the season's can't-miss events, at the top of the list is the Coal Pit Live Music Series at Incendiary Brewing in downtown Winston-Salem. And this year, our wonderful partners at the Ginther Group are proud to sponsor it to help provide unforgettable fun all summer long. The 2025 schedule begins on May 31st and runs all the way through Incendiary's 7th anniversary party on September 13th. If you visit theginthergroup.com or follow them on Facebook and Instagram, you'll be able to see the details on every upcoming show, along with any special promotions. Again, a huge shout out to the Ginther Group Real Estate for sponsoring this year's Coal Pit Live series at Incendiary Brewing. And a great way to join us in helping to say thank you, just keep them in mind for all your real estate needs. It's one simple phone call, 336-283-8689, or just one simple click to theginthergroup.com. It's time to get serious about your financial future. It's never too early, but it could be too late to get started. And that's oftentimes the hardest part, getting started. How much do I save? Where do I invest? Do I save for college or retirement? How much for each? And who do I talk to about it all? Okay, we'll keep things simple for now and help you answer the last one. We recommend you begin with a local financial advisor, and that's Jennifer Johnson of Three Magnolias Financial Advisors. She'll sit down with you for a complimentary introductory consultation and go over all of your questions. Get started on the path to achieving your financial goals. Visit threemagnoliasfinancialadvisors.com or call 336-701-1600. Get comfortable with your financial future. Three Magnolias Financial Advisors. Retirement, financial planning, and investments. Securities offered through Private Client Services. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services offered through Three Magnolias Financial Advisors. Three Magnolias Financial Advisors and Private Client Services are not affiliated. Private Client Services is under separate ownership from any other named entity.
You mentioned earlier, you talked about the sort of exploding population growth here in North Carolina. That's something that's been occurring for really the past 20 years. I've lost track of sort of where we rank at in terms of fastest growing states in the country, but I know there's a lot of people showing up to our doorstep every day here in North Carolina for numerous reasons. One, because there's companies that are looking to be here in North Carolina. But with that exploding growth, we're also seeing some challenges with housing affordability. You talked about that briefly a moment ago when you said that we need 750,000 units here in the state. Are there any specific initiatives that you feel like the chamber is involved in, or are there specific things that through y'all's research that you feel like the just the broader community should be looking at?
Uh, re- well, yeah. So North Carolina, I think we're the top 3 to 5 fastest growing states in the country right now. Obviously those numbers fluctuate, but we're still a top tier state regardless. Um, and I just lost my train of thought. I'm sorry, but yeah, to that. Oh, we'll be. I think by 2030 timeframe, we'll probably be the seventh most populated state in the country,
Wow.
which is quite dramatic. I think we're 9 or 8 right now, so I mean we're growing very quickly. How do we manage that growth is where we're at. I mentioned the housing report that we have. That's an important report. We've heard from a number of folks from around the state that their sort of eyes or just get really big when we talk about it. We've zeroed that report down county by county. So for Forsyth County, for example, we've shared all this information with leaders in the county so that they know and can make educated decisions on why we need to maybe create a neighborhood here, or create higher density areas in some places here and there. And so, the challenge though, Algenon, is the not in my backyard type of folks. unfortunately, that is still a very challenging piece that we have to deal with, and at some point in time, it's going to really start impacting economic opportunities and economic growth in communities. Those bigger cities that are okay with solving these housing challenges are going to be the winners. And those areas outside the state that, still, I mean, outside of the area that still have the mindset of they want, an acre lot and all brick home and, for under 300,000, that's just not where the marketplace is. And that's not where things are in the real world right now. And so, how do you educate local leaders to understand the market and what's really wanted out there right now and into the future. And so we're doing a lot of work in that space with some other partners trying to highlight some of the challenges around local regulations and how they drive up housing cost and how just doing some things, just permitting. How do you reduce permitting times in order to speed up projects? I mean, there's a lot of these type of things that local governments could really lead on, and it would really solve a lot of problems, but create some new opportunities for local communities as well.
Yeah, I just think the real estate space is so challenging right now. I mean, obviously, we're dealing with it's weird because I've been in the real estate business for 20 something years. I know you and your wife Brooke has been in the real estate business for an extended period too. And if you've been around for a while, you know that interest rates have been actually significantly higher than what they are right now. But it feels like in the last 10 years, developers have really gotten comfortable and used to like an ultra low rate environment. And so now with rates being where they are, a lot of developers I talk to are just not building anything. And they're chasing existing properties and trying to acquire existing properties and do value add deals. So it just feels like we're like when you look at the real estate space, it's just like a lot of landmines currently. And that's unfortunate because in a state like North Carolina where we're growing like crazy, and even the report that you all have published that we need all these units, but it's still challenging to get developers to actually construct and do some of that kind of speculative development. I would encourage my audience. I have read that report that you all issued earlier in the year. I actually shared it in our Facebook group. But I would encourage my audience, if you want to learn more about some of the housing needs here in North Carolina, go to the Chamber's website. That's a very interesting report that they published and has a lot of great insights for anybody that's in the real estate business, or maybe you just want to learn more about the particular challenges that we have here in the state. And then I would certainly echo what you said. I think one of the greatest challenges is local zoning laws. And it just makes it very difficult to do high density development. And you create a lot of urban sprawl based on the current zoning laws. And people may not understand, but those laws actually add cost to the development. And then, in an environment where every dollar counts, especially with rates being where they are, we have to do something about local zoning laws just to bring down the cost of creating affordable housing. I think Representative Zinger, who has been on this show numerous times, he's been at the forefront of that fight. I've actually written a couple articles about Zinger and some of the policies that he's been pushing in the General Assembly. I think if I'm not mistaken, Jake, I think I saw a bill where he's trying to wrestle some of the local zoning control away from the localities and make it more state-based. What are your thoughts on that? I know that comes with different pros and cons.
Yeah, no, he's doing, frankly, magnificent work. Yeoman's work in this space. His bill is House Bill 765. It's called Saving the American Dream Act, and we are fully supportive of it. We're working in conjunction with other stakeholders, hopefully in order to move it along. Unfortunately, there's some opposition to that, pretty stiff opposition to that, within the local government arena, and so. We'll see what happens with that bill. There's a lot of really good stuff in there, and there's been a lot of negotiation to hopefully get those folks in opposition to, want to help out and help solve the problem. And so our hope is that at the end of the day, we'll see some policies that get passed into law that can help do that. This doesn't take away the power of local government. It just helps really just reestablish just some what they can do. I don't want to get weedy, but
Yeah.
North Carolina is what's called a Dillon rule state. Counties and municipalities derive their power from what the state gives them. And so this is an effort to re-identify that, recodify that, and make sure that the local governments can help solve the housing problem, and really come to the table and be open to new ideas and what the future of housing needs to look like in North Carolina. The other problem with this is um, you mentioned urban sprawl. North Carolina's largest industry, as I mentioned earlier, is agriculture, and so. But what's happening is family farms are because farms aren't we're not a farming community like we used to be. Those farms are being sold off. For development or other things, and that's causing sprawl, but it's also causing the loss of farmland, future farmland that could be used with new technologies and
Mm.
new way of doing farming. And so we need to figure out how to protect those farmlands so that we can feed the world as well. Because again, we've got a very large agriculture industry, and thankfully, it's still alive and active and productive. But there's some challenges on the horizon with it as well. North Carolina Chamber Foundation, in partnership with Golden Leaf, has come up with a new strategic plan for agriculture. It's called NC Ag Leads. And I would commend your listeners to our website for the information on that. But preservation of farmland is part of the policy solutions within that new strategy.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm totally in favor of the work that Representative Zinger's doing. I think his intentions are
Very good.
well
Mm.
suited. And yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of protecting local government, but at the same time, to your point, when local government have become obstructionists to housing affordability, then yeah, I do think the state needs to step in and certainly do something about it. While I've still got a few minutes left, the hot button item that everybody's discussing all over the country is tariffs. And certainly tariffs have a big impact on what we do here in North Carolina. You've talked very extensively about our agricultural community and industry here in North Carolina. I've actually had some of these family farm owners on the show, and they've expressed expressed some negativity about tariffs. My audience know I write for the Carolina Journal, and Donald Bryson, who's the president CEO of the John Locke Foundation, he's come out with some strongly worded op-eds about tariffs, as well as Mitch Kokai, who's the senior policy analyst over at John Locke. They've both come out against tariffs. I'm curious to know what the thoughts are of the North Carolina Chamber. I mean, obviously, we continue to see tariffs and trade policies. They're shifting rapidly under the current administration. And just curious from your perspective, how do you see all these changes impacting North Carolina businesses and exporters?
Yeah, no, great question. We get this question quite a bit. And honestly, it's not an easy one, Algenon, because we have members and businesses on both sides of the equation here. And so we don't necessarily have a position on tariffs. Even if we did, we don't know that it would, we don't know that it would influence the White House or not. So what we do and mention with tariff and tariff related issues are, we think that they'll be able to come together with some solutions at some point in time. But we're encouraging them to move forward on extending the Tax Cut and Jobs Act to make sure we don't see the largest tax increase in the history of the country, and to focus on energy and regulatory reforms and make sure that we can put some good, strong pro-growth policies in place that can move the country forward.
I shared a report maybe last week, a few days ago, where I talked about some of the West Coast port traffic being down considerably, 30-40%. Are we seeing, and I'm not aware, but are we seeing any kind of contracted activity at our ports here in North Carolina, or is the chamber tracking that at all? Or
Honestly, I should be tracking it closer, but I haven't looked over the last couple weeks. I have heard there are some concerns, a little concerns, but I think our port system is has one of the fastest turn times on the East Coast. So it's one of the most technologically advanced ports on the East Coast. So there's a lot of new opportunities at the North Carolina state ports, and we have a large turning basin. There's a study now, but we're going to record to deepen the channel. So there's a lot of new opportunities there that are forthcoming, and so I think our ports are going to be in good shape. But I do think in this near term they've had some concern on traffic that has come in there because of tariffs.
Yeah, because I know there's been even some news stories about container ships just bypassing. Now, again, thinking about the West Coast port, not East Coast, but just bypassing the port altogether because they don't have enough actual stuff inventory on the
Mhm.
ship itself. Well, here's my last question for you. I mean, we talked about tariffs, we talked about some of the legislative priorities and challenges here in North Carolina. It feels like in 2025, the word of the year, every year we get a new word that is just maybe used and overused. But this year's word is definitely uncertainty. And when I talk to professionals and I talk to my investors and partners that I work with, I hear that word quite a bit. There is a lot of economic uncertainty when you look at rising interest rates. People do believe that prices are starting to creep up a little bit. We got a lot of global conflict on the tariff front. When the chamber stands back and looks at all this economic uncertainty, what are you telling businesses? Like, how are you advising our businesses in the state to be prepared?
Yeah. Thankfully, North Carolina as a top tier state, we do have a little bit more stability than some of the other states, and we're able to, I think, because of the policies that have been put into place over the last, 10, 12 years, that have positioned North Carolina to be a top tier, one, two, three, business climate state. Businesses recognize that, and that stability is important. We have political stability as well, and so they see that, they recognize that. I mean, companies want to be here. We have partnerships with countries, literally countries around the world, and that we're going to be announcing soon some others. And so we're really cautiously optimistic about the potential growth of North Carolina if we can solve some of these if we can find solution to some of these growth challenges. I think you're going to see us continue to attract more and more companies, global companies, and we're going to see more and more FDI come into the state, which is an exciting thing. And so we're just telling our member companies, and we talk to them every day, and it's things are okay, things are good. They're one of their still top concerns is talent, and making sure that we have the most educated and the brightest and the highest level of trade skills that we can get. I mean, small business is are really working well now, and we're hopeful. We got to take care of Western North Carolina. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that. There's still a lot of needs out there. So I would just ask your listeners, if they want to go on a weekend trip or an overnight stay, go see your friends out in Western North Carolina and our fellow citizens there, and spend the night, go out to eat, buy some wares, and just help them, because I heard just this past week about, there's some up in the Boone area. There's some, they're worried that next 30 days they may lose, five or six more businesses, small businesses. So, this is their peak time, and we're encouraging folks to go visit Western North Carolina and see that it is open. It is wide open. We've been encouraging DOT, and thankfully they're very much engaged in this. Let's get rid of some of the signs on the highway that kind of infer that that Western North Carolina is not open. So let's change the narrative on it, and I think that they're recognizing that to be okay thing to do. And so again, just not let's not forget about, because they have a big part of the state's economy, and so we really need to help support them and continue to support them as things heal.
Totally agree. I was talking to an investor this morning, and that's where him and his wife were heading today, was to Western North Carolina, up to Asheville. And I know the governor was on the Stephen Colbert show recently, trying to encourage the nation to continue to support Western North Carolina and come visit and tour and do those kind of things. I have a long history in the restaurant business, and I can tell my audience that if you don't get up to Western North Carolina this summer and fall, many of those Asheville restaurants that you've come to love so much, they may not exist after this year. So I think you're right, Jake. It's very important that we get up and support our neighbors in Western North Carolina. Jake, I really appreciate you, man. You're a good man, and I sleep a little better at night knowing that you are working to get jobs and the right things done here in North Carolina. So to my audience, that was Jake Cashion from the North Carolina Chamber offering a window into the policy priorities and economic realities shaping our state. If you found today's conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with others who care about North Carolina's future. Always make sure you are listening to WTOB every Sunday morning, because that's where you can lock in with me. But if you happen to miss me there, you can always subscribe to the podcast on Pandora, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your favorite podcast. You can always lock in there. And until next time, y'all stay locked in.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode on the Triad Podcast Network. Our mission is simple: provide information, advice, and stories about the people and places that make the North Carolina Triad such a great place to be. You can find us by searching Triad Podcast Network on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much wherever you like to listen. If you like what you heard and want to support the show and those that contribute, we would truly appreciate a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. It helps spread the word along, as do your shares on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram @Triad Podcast. To get in touch with us, simply email info@triadpodcast.com. Thanks for listening.
This is the Triad Podcast Network.